I was on Tor trying to find some really deep websites. I was in a chat room where people normally shared links to deeper websites and weird pictures and videos, commonly illegal pornography. Some guy named Vintage XXX posted a link without describing what it was. I clicked on it and it took me to a black screen where a big video box eventually popped up with a play button. The video thumbnail was a dark room only lit by a TV screen. Out of curiosity, I clicked play and began to hear the sound of TV static in the background as lines of static slowly swam down the video screen. There was no seek bar on this video. Then I noticed something slowly begin to emerge from behind the wall. It was a figure dressed in all black with some kind of black mask on as well. I started to suspect it was a jump scare video, and I thought I was right when the figure leaped out and ran to the screen in less than a second. It still got me even though I was expecting it, but then it got strange. The person had their face in front of the screen, slowly moving around as if he could see me and was observing me. Then I heard a crackly, demonic voice say something. It came from the video. It repeated itself, and I could make the phrase out to be, "Ask me something." I was really confused. I tried typing something, but there was nowhere to enter text. Then he said, "No, not the keyboard. Say something." I felt my heart punch the inside of my chest as he said this. I opened my mouth and mumbled the words, "You can hear me?" It responded with, "Yes." I was uncomfortable now. I thought it was a video. I pressed pause, but it didn't do anything. He said, "Don't try to leave, I want to talk." I tried moving the mouse to the exit button, but the mouse was frozen. In fact, none of the keys were responding on my keyboard. There was a long moment of silence before my webcam began flashing as if it were on, and my face popped up on the screen. "There, I got a picture of you now. Now just hang on while I get your address, and then we can meet." I started to panic, smashing every key on the keyboard, spazzing the mouse, but it did nothing. I had my finger on the power button, but it also didn't do anything. The computer wouldn't turn off. The voice was saying crazy things like, "You're stuck here. I will find you. Don't even bother." I snatched the screwdriver sitting on my desk, unscrewed the 4 screws on the bottom of my laptop, and took out the battery. The computer finally turned off. I was gasping for air as if I just ran a marathon. My heart was pounding 5 times as fast as it should have. I have since left my laptop off after that, and have resorted to using my desktop as my main computer. I'm sure by now nothing will happen. He definitely didn't have enough time to get my address. I made the mistake of searching the deep web one time. I saw on Reddit some people were talking about this thing called Tor that allows you to search the deep web, and it was basically a post asking for the strangest things people have come across on the deep web. It intrigued me, some of the things people have found, so I went along and downloaded Tor. Someone on Reddit posted a link to a basically hidden wiki with a bunch of useful links to the dark web. I was shocked at how many child pornography links there were. I did my best to steer clear of anything like that. I did come across a link that took me to another page with a bunch of links, called the Black Pages. The page was black with a bunch of red and yellow links. The red pages seemed to be the strangest. There was one link called Personal Assassin, and another called Dead Pets. Reading some of those links, I realized how messed up this whole deep web thing really was. I clicked a yellow link and ended up at yet another page full of links. There, I found something that seemed interesting. It was called the Secret Society chat. I clicked on the link, and it took even longer than all the other pages took to load. I'd say I stared at a blank white screen for a good minute before the page finally turned black and a chat box popped up. Next to the chat box was a black video screen. I wish that I had just clicked the back button at that point, but instead I typed "hey" in the chat box. What happened next was weird. Someone wearing a mask sitting in a dark room popped up on the screen. I felt like my heart stopped when I saw my face pop up on the screen as well. The website was using my webcam even though I naturally keep it off. I covered it with my thumb and tried to close the page, but at this point my taskbar was gone, along with the minimize and exit buttons at the top of the Tor window. I tried hitting Ctrl-Alt-Delete, but it did nothing. And then there was a muffled, distorted voice coming from my speakers. I could only assume it was the guy in the mask speaking. He was masking his voice with some kind of voice changer. I clearly remember, he said,
"I still see you, James."
My heart sank. He had said my name. I began holding the power button on my laptop, and it felt like an eternity before it finally cut power. I didn't know if I should report what happened to the police, but from what I knew, everything was anonymous with Tor, so it didn't even seem worth it. It was obviously just a low-life hacker. I went on with my life after deleting the Tor browser from my computer, but about 2 weeks later, my mom threw a letter in my room. She told me it came in the mail for me. There was no return address on it. I ripped the letter open and unfolded the paper tucked inside. In huge letters that filled the paper were the 3 words, "Don't come back." I felt like I was going to throw up from the sickening feeling it gave me. I crumpled up the paper and threw it away. I didn't call the cops as it seemed pointless, and I didn't tell my mom because it would only cause her to panic. But I have no idea how or why they got my address. Most of the links just took you to pages that would list hundreds of other pages. At first, it just seemed like an endless cycle of pointless pages, until I somehow landed on a very dark-themed website. I don't mean it was a horror-themed, scary story website. I mean the banner had the disgusting and disturbing picture of what looked like a girl no older than 12, blindfolded with slits in her mouth and bruises all over her face. I never knew how dark the internet can get, but I knew right after seeing that picture, it can only get worse on that website. I could have and should have just closed the browser or clicked the back button then and there, but something possessed me to click through the forums on each and every forum post. They were all littered with gut-wrenching, brutal, and sadistic pictures of children, from babies and toddlers all the way up to a 16-year-old girl, all being tortured. I don't even want to describe what I saw, but I want you to understand the true horrors that go on in the deep web, and in this world. One post was titled, "Followed 10-year-old home successfully, knocked out and brought back." I dared click on it, and saw pictures of an innocent 10-year-old boy who was originally on his way home from school, tied up to a chair attached to some kind of torture machine that looked as if it belonged in a Saw movie. I scrolled down, and the pictures got worse. The device on his chair started to carve into his wrist. I couldn't even finish that post. I had to click back. I found another shocking post with a link to a video of a newborn child being dipped into a pot of boiling water. I could only watch about 10 seconds before closing the video. I would describe more, but I don't want to share any more of it for your own sake. However, the worst part that still kills me knowing this is that I used to be a camp counselor for about 4 years, and I had dealt with many hundreds of kids. A few years back, there was the very upsetting news that one of the kids attending the camp, one of the kids in my group, had gone missing. That was many years ago, and everyone since has just given her up for dead. That was confirmed when I clicked on one certain post. There was the dead body of an 8-year-old girl, almost completely mutilated, but face still recognizable. I instantly recognized the face as the girl who had gone missing so long ago. I literally threw up because of the horror I was feeling. I called the police and told them I need the cops right away. They showed up quickly and I showed them the screen, and then a picture of the missing child. They gave their own signs of disgust before giving me a lecture about how I went about reporting this wrong, that I shouldn't have called the cops or whatever. But they still took down the URL and thanked me for finding this. It took much longer than I hoped for the website to finally come down, but I have no idea if they ever caught the sick fuck that did that, or anybody that posted anything on this forum for that matter. There used to be a website on the dark web called the Silk Road. It was an underground illegal drug marketplace. I had heard about it through friends that had used it. Our weed dealer was moving out of state and he was our only connection, so my friends started using this website and claimed that it was legit. The timing couldn't be better to score some pot since my parents were in Atlantic City for the weekend. I downloaded the Tor browser and checked it out. The biggest seller on the site was cannabis, of course. I left a comment on one of the newer listings asking for anybody to tell me if the listing was legit. I came back to the site about an hour later and I had one new message. It was from a user named Illy B. He saw my comment and offered to sell me an ounce for a really low price, but he only does local. I've done local deals before and I've never really had a problem with them, so I told him that I was in Washington. Turned out he lived only about an hour away from me. I suggested we meet halfway, but shockingly, he said he would just meet me in my hometown. I couldn't turn down that offer. He said he would be over after work around 9 o'clock. I told him to meet me in the Wendy's parking lot. He asked me a bunch of weird questions like my address, who I live with. I definitely didn't want to give my address to a pot dealer, and I lied and told him I lived alone. A little bit later, he texted me telling me he found a much better place to do the deal. It was behind an old closed-down retail store at the edge of town. My sketchiness alarm was going off, but I was so desperate to get that grass. I knew exactly where that building was, so I drove over and got there within 5 minutes. I parked the car behind the building, but couldn't see anyone else there. Then I got a text saying he was on his way. That made no sense, because if he lived an hour away, how would he know of this place? I sat there for like 20 minutes trying to get another response from him, but he never answered. I decided to just give it up. I had a feeling something sketchy was going on and that I should just leave while I still could. It took me 10 minutes to get back home. My front door was open. I knew I had shut it, so I was worried that my parents had gotten home early. I parked my car in the driveway since my dad didn't take it and went back inside. The light upstairs in my parents' bedroom was on, and I heard some kind of shuffling noise. I shouted "Mom" and "Dad," and the noises stopped. The door to the room slammed shut, and I knew something was wrong. My dad's car wasn't even in sight, and now he's not answering. It took me long enough to realize that whoever was in there wasn't either one of my parents. Since I'm a straight up idiot, I grabbed a carving knife from the kitchen and charged upstairs to my parents' room. I practically almost broke down the door after slamming it open. I didn't see anyone, but I right away picked up on the fact that my mom's jewelry case was opened. I grabbed the phone in my parents' room and called 911, but something grabbed me from under the bed. I used the knife in my hand to stab their arm, and the man under the bed began to scream in agony. Since it was a corded phone, I couldn't leave the room with it. All I had time to tell the police was that someone broke into my house, and then gave them my address. The man crawled out from under the bed with the knife still in his arm. He didn't even look at me, he just ran straight for the front door into his car. The best I could describe him was that he was a black man with a backwards hat and raggy clothing, and he drove a black Honda Accord. Of course, I couldn't tell the police much. I couldn't bring up the website, as it was illegal to use it. All I could do was describe him to the best of my ability. So he's still out there home free. I can only guess he got my address by hacking me somehow. I caught my brother browsing some weird website one night. It had pictures of guns and illegal drugs. He and I are really close, so we don't usually hide things from each other. So when I questioned him, he straight up told me he was buying weed on a website called Mr. Nice Guy Market. I told him that's illegal and that he would obviously get caught. Then he went on about telling me that he's safe and anonymous on the deep web. I assured him that that's complete nonsense, that everything is traceable, but he told me he's already used it at least 10 times and that I can't stop him. So I gave up and watched him make his purchase. He found some new listing of cannabis called The Poison Queen. It had one review which rated it positively. I suggested to him that he find one with more ratings, but he started acting like some kind of pro, telling me to relax. The seller was from the same state as us, which would make for quick delivery, claimed my brother. He did his thing. He used some kind of weird program to encrypt his message to the seller, which included his name, our address, and other info. I reminded him it was a mistake, but he told me everything is fine. About a week later, my brother started getting concerned that he got scammed because there was never any word from the seller. Coincidentally, on that same night, we got a heavy knock at the door. I got nervous that it was the police and that they caught on to my brother's illegal drug purchase, but it turned out to be much worse than just the police. He opened the door, and we were greeted by some sketchy-looking guy with medium-length hair, all fuzzy and messy, a brown, messy beard, a fat belly, and a very obviously fake Rolex on his wrist. He then said my brother's name, and I saw my brother step back a bit. The guy asked my brother if he was the one who bought the weed. My brother didn't know how to answer. All I heard him mumble was, "I thought you would ship it." The guy then started motioning for us to come out to his van. I told my brother not to, but he went out anyway. I had to follow him to make sure nothing happened. I didn't feel right about this situation. About halfway to his van, I noticed something in the passenger circular window on the back. There was somebody with a ski mask on, barely making themselves visible as they peered out to us. I saw the guy leading us to the van notice him and begin to motion with his hand for the guy to get down. At that moment, I grabbed my little brother and dragged him all the way back in the house. I didn't realize until it was almost too late that the guy was chasing me. I was able to shut the door and lock it. They saw there were no cars in the driveway, so they must have assumed our parents weren't home. The guy started banging and kicking at the door, and by some stroke of luck, a larger man walking with his dog passed by and noticed what was going on. He questioned the guy at the door, which seemed to scare him off. We watched as the van drove down the road out of sight. I was so anxious to tell my dad, even if it meant ratting out my brother, that I ran to my dad's car when he got home to greet him. I then noticed the same van halfway down the block, parked by the entrance of the cul-de-sac down the road. Only for a moment though, before it drove off seconds after I noticed. I haven't actually seen it since, and it's been 3 whole months. I think this was a good lesson for my brother to stop messing around on the web. My worst experience on tour was stumbling upon a horrific, sickening page called Human Experiments. I don't remember where exactly I found it. It was buried deep somewhere in a link archive page. The homepage described the content on the site. I was distraught at what I was reading. It said in a red, bloody font, "The experiments conducted for this website are to prove that not all humans are born equal. The people chosen to be experimented on were usually homeless, but also the unfortunate souls that happen to get caught by these sick fucks. These so-called experiments ranged from starvation and water restriction, reactions to extreme pain and torture, infections and diseases, and even infant tolerances to x-rays, pain, and heat." I had seen all those horrific shock videos like 3 Guys, 1 Hammer, so I thought I would be prepared for what I was going to see, but I wasn't. I made the mistake of clicking on the first link to the experiment photos. I honestly had to retain the urge to puke. I don't want to even give a description of what I saw, but I'll just say, there were innocent victims, people just like you and I, going through horrible, horrible things that nobody should ever go through. Against my better judgment, I scrolled the entire page, and it only got worse. Pretty soon a whole section dedicated to infants and toddlers came up. I had somehow made it to the bottom of the page, and then a little box popped up on the screen. I didn't know what it was until a line of text popped up. The text said, "Did you enjoy the site?" I realized it was a chat box. I typed, "Who is this?" The stranger promptly replied, evading my question by saying, "What was your favorite part of the site?" I asked the same question again. This time he actually acknowledged my question and told me he was the site owner. I told him that this was sick and inhumane and that I would report this site immediately. That was my biggest mistake, telling him that, because after a short pause, he finally said, I see your name is Michael, and you live in Massachusetts. He was right. But instead of clicking out of that browser right away, I typed in, "No, you're wrong." About 10 seconds later, he typed something that made my heart feel like it shriveled up, and that was my address, my complete, correct home address. His final words were, "Have a nice day." I closed the browser and slammed my laptop shut. I called the police first thing before even telling my parents. When the cops got to our house, I explained everything to everyone at once. They wanted to see my computer since I didn't remember the link to the website. Unfortunately, the Tor browser doesn't save your browsing history, so I couldn't even help them in shutting down this website. The cops told us that if what I said was true, that we should find another place to stay as soon as possible. Thankfully, this was around the time that we were looking to move away anyway. I couldn't believe how fast my parents were able to sell the house and find another. I apologized to them every day for a month after this happened. I hated to have to make them go through this all. I liked to think the guy in the chat was just bluffing, but I couldn't take the chance. I don't think anybody should ever look into the deep web, as there is no good to come of it.